Class 11, Chapter 16, Digestion and Absorption. Food is one of the basic requirements of all living organisms. The major components of our body are carbohydrates, proteins, and fat. Vitamins and minerals are also required in small quantity. Food provides energy and organic material for growth and repair of tissues. The water we take in plays an important role in metabolic processes and also prevents dehydration of the body. Biomacromolecules in food cannot be utilized by our body in their original form. They have to be broken down and converted into simple substances in the digestive system. This process of conversion of complex food substance to simple absorbable forms is called digestion and is carried out by our digestive system by mechanical and biochemical methods. General organization of the human digestive system is shown in figure 16.1. 16.1 Digestive system. The human digestive system consists of the alimentary canal and the associated glands. 16.1.1 Alimentary canal. The alimentary canal begins with an interior opening, the mouth, and it opens out posteriorly through the anus. The mouth leads to the buccal cavity or oral cavity. The oral cavity has a number of teeth and a muscular tongue. Each tooth is embedded in a socket of jawbone. Figure 16.2. This type of attachment is called thecodont. Majority of mammals, including human beings, form two sets of teeth during their life. A set of temporary milk or deciduous teeth replaced by a set of permanent or adult teeth. This type of dentition is called diphyodont. An adult human has 32 permanent teeth, which are of four different types. Heterodont dentition, namely incisors, canine, premolars, and molars. Arrangement of teeth in each half of the upper and lower jaw in the order incisors, canine, premolar, and molar is represented by a dental formula, which in human is 2123 by 2123. The hard shaving surface of the teeth made up of the enamel helps in the mastication of food. The tongue is a freely movable muscular organ attached to the floor of the oral cavity by the frenulum. The upper surface of the tongue has a small projection called papillae, some of which bear taste bud. The oral cavity leads into a short pharynx, which serves as a common passage for food and air. The esophagus and a trachea windpipe opens into the pharynx. A cartilaginous flap called epiglottis prevents the entry of food into the glottis. Opening of the windpipe during swallowing. The esophagus is a thin, long tube which extends posteriorly, passing through the neck, thorax, and diaphragm, and leads to a J-shaped bag-like structure called stomach. A muscular sphincter gastroesophageal regulates the opening of the esophagus into the stomach. The stomach, located in the upper left portion of the abdominal cavity, has three major parts: a cardiac portion into which the esophagus opens, a fundic region, and a pyloric portion which opens into the first part of the small intestine. Figure 16.3. Small intestine is distinguishable into three regions: a C-shaped duodenum, a long coiled middle portion jejunum, and a highly coiled ileum. The opening of the stomach into the duodenum is guarded by a pyloric sphincter. Ileum opens into the large intestine, consists of caecum, colon, and rectum. Caecum is a small blind sac which hosts some symbiotic microorganisms. A narrow finger-like tubular projection. The vermiform appendix, which is a vestigial organ, arises from the cecum. The cecum opens into the colon. The colon is divided into three parts: an ascending, a transverse, and a descending part. The descending part opens into the rectum, which opens out through the anus. The wall of the alimentary canal from esophagus to rectum possesses four layers. Figure 16.4, namely serosa, muscularis, submucosa, and mucosa. Serosa is the outermost layer and is made up of a thin mesothelium epithelium of visceral organs with some connective tissue. Muscularis is formed by smooth muscle, usually arranged into an inner circular and an outer longitudinal layer. An oblique muscular layer may be present in some region. The submucosal layer is formed by loose connective tissues containing nerves, blood, and lymph vessels. Duodenum glands are also present in some mucosa. The innermost layer lining the lumen of the alimentary canal is the mucosa. This layer forms irregular folds, rugae, in the stomach and small finger-like enfoldings called villi in the small intestine, figure 16.5. The cells lining the villi produce numerous microscopic projections called microvilli, giving a brush border appearance. These modifications increase the surface area enormously. Villi are supplied with a network of capillaries and a large lymph vessel called the lacteal. Mucosal epithelium has goblet cells which secrete mucus that helps in lubrication. Mucosa also forms glands in the stomach, gastric glands, and crypts in between the bases of villi in the intestine. Crypts of Livercune. All of the four layers show modification in different parts of the alimentary canal. 16.1.2 Digestive glands. The digestive gland associated with the alimentary canal, including the salivary glands, the liver, and the pancreas. Saliva is mainly produced by three pairs of salivary glands: parotids, cheeks, the submaxillary, submandibular, lower jaw, and the sublingual below the tongue. These glands, situated just outside the buccal cavity, secrete salivary juice into the buccal cavity. Liver is the largest gland of the body, weighing about 1.2 to 1.5 kg in an adult human. It is situated in the abdominal cavity just below the diaphragm and has two lobes. The hepatic lobe are the structural and functional unit of liver, containing hepatic cells arranged in the form of cords. Each lobule is covered by a thin connective tissue sheath called the glycan capsule. The bile secreted by the hepatic cell passes through the hepatic duct and is stored and concentrated in a thin muscular sac called the gallbladder. The duct of a gallbladder, cystic duct, along with the hepatic duct from the liver, forms the common bile duct, figure 16.6. The bile duct and the pancreatic duct open together into the duodenum as the common hepatopancreatic duct, which is guarded by a sphincter called the sphincter of Oddi. The pancreas is a compound, both exocrine and endocrine, elongated organ situated between the limbs of the U-shaped duodenum. The exocrine portion secrete an alkaline pancreatic juice containing enzyme, and the endocrine portion secrete hormones, insulin and glucagon. 16.2 Digestion of food. The process of digestion is accomplished by mechanical and chemical processes. The buccal cavity performs two major functions: mastication of the food and facilitation of swallowing. The teeth and the tongue, with the help of saliva, masticulate and mix up the food thoroughly. Mucus in saliva helps in lubricating and adhering the masticated food particles into a bolus. The bolus is then conveyed into the pharynx and then into the esophagus by swallowing or deglutition. The bolus further passes down through the esophagus by successive waves of muscular contractions called peristalsis. The gastroesophageal sphincter controls the passage of food into the stomach. The saliva secreted into the oral cavity contains electrolytes, sodium, potassium chloride, and enzymes salivary amylase and the lysozyme. The chemical process of digestion is initiated in the oral cavity by the hydrolytic action of the carbohydrates splitting enzyme. The salivary amylase, about 30% of the starch, is hydrolyzed here by the enzyme optimum pH 6.8 into a disaccharide maltose. Lysozyme present in the saliva act as an antibacterial agent that prevents infection. The mucosa of stomach has gastric gland. Gastric glands have three major types of cell, namely: first, mucus cell, next cell which secrete mucus; second, peptic or chief cell which secrete the proenzyme pepsinogen; and third, parietal or oxyntic cell which secrete HCl and intrinsic factor essential for absorption of vitamin B12. The stomach stores the food for 4 to 5 hours. The food mixes thoroughly with the acidic gastric juice of the stomach by the churning movement of its muscular wall and is called the chyme. The proenzyme pepsinogen, or on exposure to hydrochloric acid, get converted into the active enzyme pepsin. The proteolytic enzyme of the stomach, pepsin, convert protein into proteoses and peptones, peptides. The mucus and bicarbonates present in the gastric juice plays an important role in lubrication and protection of the mucosal epithelium from exocretion by the highly concentrated hydrochloric acid. HCl provide The acidic pH 1.8 optimal for pepsin. Renin is a proteolytic enzyme found in gastric juice of infant which help in the digestion of milk protein. Small amount of lipase are also secreted by gastric gland. Various types of movements are generated by the mucociliary layer of the small intestine. These movements help in a through mixing up of the food with various secretions in the intestine and thereby facilitate digestion. The bile, pancreatic juice and the intestinal juice are the secretion released into the small intestine. Pancreatic juice and bile are released through the hepatopancreatic duct. The pancreatic juice contain inactive enzyme trypsinogen, chymotrypsinogen, procarbopeptidase, amylase, lipase, and nuclease. Trypsinogen is activated by an enzyme enterokinase secreted by the intestinal mucosa into active trypsin, which in turn activate the other enzyme in the pancreatic juice. The bile released into the duodenum contain bile pigment, bilirubin and biliverdin, bile salt, cholesterol and phospholipid, but no enzymes. Bile help in emulsification of fats, breaking down of fats into very small micelles. Bile also activate lipase. The intestinal mucosal epithelium has globulate cells which secrete mucus. The secretion of the brush border cells of the mucosa along with the secretion of the goblet cells constitute the intestinal juice or succus entericus. This juice contain a variety of enzymes like disaccharidase, example maltase, dipeptidase, lipase, nucleosidase, etc. The mucus along with the bicarbonate from the pancreas protect the intestinal mucosa from acid as well as provide an alkaline medium pH 7.8 for enzymatic activities. Submucosal gland, Bernard's gland also help in this. Proteins, proteoses and peptones, partially hydrolyzed protein in the chyme reaching the intestine are acted upon by the proteolytic enzyme of pancreatic juice as given below. Carbohydrates in the chyme are hydrolyzed by pancreatic amylase into disaccharides. Fats are broken down by lipase with the help of bile into di and monoglyceride. Nuclease in the pancreatic juice act on nucleic acid to form nucleotides and nucleosides. The enzyme in the succus entericus act on the end product of the above reaction to form the respective simple absorbable form. These final steps in digestion occur very close to the mucosal epithelial cell of the intestine. The breakdown of biomacromolecules mentioned above occur in the duodenum region of the small intestine. The simple substance thus formed are absorbed in the jejunum and ileum region of the small intestine. The undigested and unabsorbed substance are passed on to the large intestine. No significant digestive activity occur in the large intestine. The function of large intestine are first absorption of some water, minerals and certain drugs. Second, secretion of mucus which helps in adhering the waste undigested particles together and lubricating it for an easy passage. The undigested unabsorbed substance called feces enter into the cecum of the large intestine through ileocecal valve, which prevents the backflow of the fecal matter. It is temporarily stored in the rectum till defecation. The activities of the gastrointestinal tract are under neural and hormonal control for proper coordination of different parts. The sight, smell and or the presence of food in the oral cavity can stimulate the secretion of saliva. Gastric and intestinal secretion are also similarly stimulated by neural signals. The muscular activities of different parts of the alimentary canal can also be moderated by neural mechanism. Both local and through CNS, hormonal control of the secretion of digestive juices is carried out by the local hormone produced by the gastric and intestinal mucosa. 16.3 Absorption of digested products. Absorption is the process by which the end products of digestion pass through the intestinal mucosa into the blood or lymph. It is carried out by the passive, active or facilitated transport mechanism. Small amount of monosaccharides like glucose, amino acid and some electrolytes like Chloride ions are generally absorbed by simple diffusion. The passage of these substances into the blood depends upon the concentration gradient. However, some substances like glucose, and amino acid are absorbed in the help of carrier protein. This mechanism is called the facilitate transport. Transport of water depends upon the osmotic gradient. Active transport occur against the concentration gradient and hence require energy. Various nutrients like amino acid, monosaccharide like glucose, electrolytes like sodium are absorbed into the blood by this mechanism. Fatty acid and glycerol, being insoluble, cannot be absorbed into the blood. They are first incorporated into small droplets called micelles, which move into the intestinal mucosa. They are reformed into very small protein coated fat globules called the chylomicrons, which are transported into the lymph vessel lacteal in the villi. These lymph vessels ultimately release the absorbed substance into the bloodstream. Absorption of substances take place in different parts of the alimentary canal like mouth, stomach, small intestine, large intestine. However, maximum absorption occur in the small intestine. A summary of absorption, site of absorption and substance absorbed is given in the table 16.1. The absorbed substance finally reach the tissue which utilize them for their activity. The process called assimilation. The digestive waste solidified into coherent feces into the rectum. In the rectum, initiate a neural reflex causing an urge to or desire for its removal. The ejection of feces into the outside through the anal opening. Defecation is a voluntary process and is carried out by a mass peristaltic movement. 16.4 Disorders of digestive system. The inflammation of the intestinal tract is the most common alimentary due to the bacterial or viral infection. The infection are also caused by the parasites of the intestine like tapeworm, roundworm, threadworm, hookworm, pinworm, etc. Jaundice. The liver is affected. Skin and eyes turn yellow due to the deposit of bile pigments. Vomiting. It is the ejection of stomach content through the mouth. This reflex action is controlled by the vomit center in the medulla. A feeling of nausea precedes vomiting. Diarrhea. The abnormal frequency of bowel movement and increased liquidity of the facial discharge is known as the diarrhea. It reduces the absorption of food. Constipation. In constipation, the feces are retained within the rectum as the bowel movement occur irregularly. Ingestion. In this condition, the food is not properly digested, leading to a feeling of fullness. The causing of indigestion are inadequate enzyme secretion and anxiety, food poisoning, overeating, and spicy food. Summary. The digestive system of human consists of the alimentary canal and associated digestive gland. The alimentary canal consists of the mouth, buccal cavity, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, rectum, and the anus. The accessory digestive gland include the salivary gland, the liver with gallbladder, and the pancreas. Inside the mouth, the teeth masticate the food. The tongue tastes the food and manipulates it for proper mastication by mixing with the saliva. Saliva contain a large starch digestive enzyme, salivary amylase, that digests the starch and converts it into maltose disaccharide. The food then passes into the pharynx and enters into the esophagus in the form of bolus, which is further carried down through the esophagus by peristalsis into the stomach. In stomach, mainly protein digestion take place. Absorption of simple sugar, alcohol, and medicines also take place in the stomach. The chyme food enters into the duodenum portion of the small intestine and is acted on by the pancreatic juice, bile, and finally by the enzyme in the succus entericus, so that the digestion of the carbohydrate, protein, and fat is completed. The food then enters into the jejunum and ileum portion of the small intestine. Carbohydrates are digested and converted into monosaccharides like glucose. Proteins are finally broken down into amino acid. The fats are converted to fatty acid and glycerol. The digested end products are absorbed into the body through the epithelial lining of the intestinal villi. The undigested food feces enters into the cecum of the large intestine through ileocacal valve, which prevent the backflow of the fecal matter. Most of the water is absorbed in the large intestine. The undigested food becomes semi-solid in nature and then enter into the rectum, anal canal, and is finally digested out through the anus.